So today is about cathedrals, and I have been blessed. Like Kay, I am a traveler, and I have been blessed. It's just amazing to me that I am not a particularly wealthy person, but I have been blessed with so many opportunities to travel. And I have seen some of the world's greatest cathedrals. There's an incredible cathedral in San Francisco that looks out over the whole Bay Area. I've been to the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York. I've been in Notre Dame in Paris, and one of the greatest cathedrals of all time in Chartres in France. And those are in my mind, those are man's attempt at creating what is really out there. Did anybody hear or see for themselves the Aurora Borealis this past week?
Beautiful.
Wasn't it awesome? I've been blessed. I've been up to Alaska, and I've seen the Aurora Borealis there. And one time, back in the 1950s, there was a Aurora Borealis that came all the way down far as south as Washington, D.C. And I remember seeing that. But just the awe-inspiring, I don't know, you just can't find words because it is something so great and so beautiful. And I think in all different seasons of civilization, men have built cathedrals because they're trying to capture some of that awe that we really experience in nature. And I think sometimes as spiritual congregations, we can get caught up in, we need to have a church, and yet our church is really the fact that we are all here together in love. And that we really don't need a cathedral. The real cathedral is out there, and the more we connect to that, that's sort of the essence of the message today. So I had the privilege about 2 weeks ago of taking a trip, and it was on the Rocky Mountaineer. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it is a train. There's two of them. There's the Canadian one that goes from roughly around Calgary all the way over to Victoria, and it is this train that you get on, and it takes you through some of the most beautiful, incredible scenery. And then there's now, after COVID, so it's only about 4 years old, the Rocky Mountaineer people started another one that goes from Denver to Moab, Utah. So it starts in Denver and it goes up the Rocky Mountains, and of course, a week ago, all the aspens were turning gold. So you go up slowly into the Rocky Mountains, and then you realize you're on this high plateau. And then we followed the Columbia River? No, it's not. The Colorado River, all the way through. We went through the Continental Divide, which is a tunnel that is like 15 minutes. You have to go through this tunnel. In fact, as we went through this, we went through 41 different tunnels on this trip because we're going through the mountains. And you follow the Colorado River, and you see these rapids and these giant canyons. And to me, the main purpose of going on this trip was to be on a train. I do not think there is any more gracious, wonderful way to travel than to be on a train and you just glide through. Or you hear even maybe that slight rumble, and just to take a little nap and just listen to that train. I love trains. And so that was the main reason that we booked this particular trip. And I heard that, we were going to Moab and that there was a national park there. There's two national parks. One is Canyonlands and the other is Arches. Has anybody ever been to Arches? Of course Kay has. I was not prepared for it. It is this area of the most incredible rock formations. There's many arches that have actually been carved out over time by wind and water. And all these structures, these just incredible, it's so enormous. And we went through canyons and all of this. And the beauty, I think, for me, one of the things was as a student, I was as a college student. My minor was geology. So when you look at these rock formations, it really gives you quite a sense of perspective, because what started all of these transformations happening in this particular area is that underneath all these rocks, there is a layer of pure salt. The salt was laid down by an ocean that left nothing but the salt, and the salt became liquefied, and it destabilized this whole area. So just think for a minute, we all know that we have the Dead Sea that's over in the Mediterranean, or near the Mediterranean in the Near East. And that sea is called a Dead Sea because nothing's leaving it, and it is slowly evaporating. And it is, but think of how many thousands and thousands and thousands of years it is going to take even for that sea to become salt. And then you think, how many millions and millions of years all this other sediment laid on top of the salt. And then how many millions of years did it take for this stuff to start turning and metamorphosing into different layers and curvatures and elevated elements? It's just, just the time alone, what a perspective. It is just so awesome. And it is the same kind of thing that we experience if we get to go outside and look at the stars at night. Or we see the aurora borealis, or we see a sunrise. So that was the gift that I had a couple of weeks ago. And I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you that I came away with after having this beautiful, incredible experience. In our society, we often say, well, so-and-so is just as solid as a rock. And we look at rocks and we think they are so solid. And you go into a situation where, like Arches Nap or the Grand Canyon, any of these places where there are these giant rock formations, and you realize that those are all, every single one of them have been transformed by pressure. Immense pressure and heat. You can see curvatures. You can see places where the minerals have actually been changed from from quartz into quartzite, or that something has changed from a conglomerate into a mica schist, and all of these different kinds of actual rock. The way the rock itself in these various strata have changed because of the pressure. And the big lesson, of course, that I take away from it is the fact that really to be alive is to go through change. That's what it is to be alive. I think in some quarters, as spirituality has grown and morphed into different things, especially religion, there has been all this sort of quest on the part of man that somehow, if we are just godly enough, and if we do all the right things and say all the right things and do the right prayers and live the most godly life, that somehow our lives will have no problems. But the fact of the matter, it's like what Einstein said, life is like a bicycle. You have to keep moving or you're going to fall off. And that's what life is. It's not about trying to keep ourselves in a little glass cage where nothing ever disturbs us. These things happen, and they are essential to our growth. So when we here in this community talk about spirituality, it's not that it's going to protect us from anything bad ever happening, but it gives us the tools. It gives us the perspective. And Laurel said it perfectly. We can be in the woods struggling, and we're in the woods, but when you get to that tree line, and I think that's what the gift of spirituality is, and having a spiritual outlook on life, you get to the tree line and suddenly you see a different picture, a greater picture. And you're able to trust, and you're able to know that you can take the next step forward. So change and challenges are inevitable. They are part of life. However, suffering is not inevitable. And that is the greatest thing that I've learned from my own studies of Buddhist thought. Most of our suffering comes from resisting the change. And I have a quick little example to share with you today. Usually Saturdays, especially the Saturday before I'm going to give a talk, that I just block it off on my calendar. I don't go anywhere. I don't even go to the grocery store. I'll just, whatever is in the freezer is going to have to do. And it's my day to think prayerfully and to write and to be on my computer, and I do mind mapping and, sort of come up with what I think is going to be a magnificent church talk. I always think of church lady. So I always call them church talks. I hate to think of them as sermons. It's the day I'm going to devote, and I'm going to be a spiritual person and wait for God to speak to me and create this church talk. Well, on Friday, I participated in a clinical research study of the newest flu vaccine. It's a blind study, so I don't know whether I got the latest, greatest, or the one that's this year, or an advanced one. So I went and I filled out all the paperwork and got my it was like a tiny little prick. And I was fine. And Saturday morning I woke up, and all I can say is, this flu, I should not have to have flu for another 5 years. My arm was like a rock. And I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I tried staying up, I think till like 9 o'clock in the morning. I was trying to do my regular things, and then I realized something just wasn't right, and I went back to bed. And the rest of the day, I had no concentration whatsoever. Now, here's the thing about resistance. The resistance would be, oh no, the sky is falling, this shouldn't be happening, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to push through, and I'm going to have to... Instead, I had to accept the fact that I'm having a reaction to my flu shot. So the best thing to do today is to take care of me today and to just trust that the right thoughts, and they always usually do come, the right thoughts are going to come, and I'll just get up early tomorrow morning. I'm going to just trust that it's going to be all right, instead of catastrophizing. And, especially in our society today, I think it's so important to look above and to keep that higher perspective, because it is so easy today, with all the things going on, to get into awfulizing. Thank you, Reverend Phyllis Clay Sparks, because she created that awfulizing about everything. Suffering is optional. Do we go through painful experiences and difficult experiences and challenges and changes? That's part of what creates our experience of life. But do we have to suffer during those experiences? No, the suffering is optional. It's by accepting what's going on and doing our best with what we have and with our own spiritual practices that gets us through these things, so that transformation can happen. Because that's what life is. It's transformation and change, just as it is in ancient rocks. The other thing that I took away from this trip, being in a train and watching this incredible scenery go by, was the difference between being a witness and being entertained. And it was a really difficult choice. When you're on the Rocky Mountaineer, you have these really comfortable seats. It's not quite the same. The American one's a little bit different from the Canadian version. The American one, you have two cars. There's a car where you have your meals are brought to you, and there's a wonderful host. And of course the Canadians, they're Canadians. They're always so nice. And telling you all these descriptions of all the things that you're seeing. And he had wonderful stories. He was just a really wonderful entertainer. And then there was another car, which was just the club car, where you could get a gin and tonic. But the big thing was, it was quiet. It was quiet, and you just had these really comfy seats. And on one hand, I wanted to hear all the stories, and on the other hand, peace and quiet. And I chose the peace and quiet. Because I think it is so important when you're experiencing these things to really be present with what is, rather than hear somebody else's interpretation of what is. I wanted to just really be present with being on the train. I wanted to be really present with all that I was seeing. And I think for each of us, that's sort of another part of being in a cathedral. I'd like you to do something. I want you to turn to the person next to you, just look in their eyes for a minute, and just say to them, hello, I'm here for you today. That is a holy moment. That's a holy moment. That's what it's like to be in a cathedral. The cathedral is anywhere we are present with love, with kindness and compassion for other people.